For 25 years I lived in Washington, D.C., and for 18 of those years I maintained a vigil in front of the White House for global nuclear disarmament. And in 1984 I had just recently come to D.C. and I was walking through Lafayette Park in front of the White House and encountered a big mushroom cloud sign that said, "Revelation, this need not be our end." And I stopped to talk to the people who had that sign. And within a week, I had quit my job and given everything I owned to my daughter, who had just announced she was moving out of the house. So I said, "Well, okay, you can have all my stuff." And joined the vigil, and I was out in front of the White House a good portion of every day for 15 years, like 20 hours, 20 to 22 hours a day for 15 years. And then for 3 years, I was there in the mornings. And then after that, I became manager of the Peace House, which is 10 blocks from the White House. And the reason that I did this is because all my life, from the time I was just a small child in California, I was born in 1947, and when I went to kindergarten, one of the first things they taught us was duck and cover, to get under our desks and hide from the bombs. And my parents had pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the Life magazine that they got, and I had seen that, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I remember when I first had children, my first child, I would sit next to the crib and cry, thinking about what could happen if there were a nuclear war. So, and I always wanted to do something about it, and so when I encountered these people who were doing something about it, I said, yeah, and that's it. And so I joined the vigil. And it was quite a challenge. I got this flyer, I don't know if you got this one. This I produced in 2009 after the founder of the vigil, whom I had married in 1984, William Thomas. He died in 2009, and so I produced this as a description, basically, of the work that he'd been doing and we've been doing. On the back, you'll notice that there is, at the bottom left, it says the Nuclear Disarmament and Economic Conversion Act. That is a bill that it has been introduced into Congress in varying forms. It's now the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Economic and Energy Conversion Act. But it's been introduced 11 times by DC's Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. That bill is this flyer right here, HR-1650. And it came about because because we were circulating a petition asking the United States and the then Soviet Union to agree to abolish nuclear weapons. And somebody came to the park who had been part of a campaign to impeach the governor of Arizona. And he said, you know, you need to make a vote, you need to have a vote initiative so that the politicians who have been lobbying and they aren't paying any attention and they're not introducing it, they can understand this is a popular idea. So that's what we did. In 1990, we incorporated Proposition 1 Committee, and we launched a voter initiative campaign, which we won in 1993, Initiative 37. And Eleanor Holmes Norton, the Congresswoman, right before the election, she was on the radio saying basically that she wasn't going to introduce it if it passed, and it passed overwhelmingly, actually. And she changed her mind after, but she also changed the language, because what we were asking for was a constitutional amendment. And she told us that would make her the laughing stock of Congress if she were to introduce it that way. So she introduced it as a bill, and has done it every session since, quite happily. She now calls it her bill, which is good. And what it's asking is that the United States commit itself that we will get rid of our nuclear weapons, and everyone else does. We'll use the money that's saved instead to shut down and clean up the nuclear weapons industries, which arguably includes the nuclear power industries, because as long as there's nuclear power, there's going to be enriched uranium or plutonium being produced. And be used for cleanup, environmental restoration of the nuclear sites, and to convert the other arms industries into clean energy, carbon-free, nuclear-free energy production, so that we can shift from a war economy to a clean energy economy and solve the problems without anybody having to suffer. We're not saying shut down these businesses entirely, just convert them so that people are working in something that isn't going to be destructive. It is, the bill has received some attention from other representatives. It's had, I think, a total over the years of 14 co-sponsors. But it's been stuck in committees, and it's really, really been a hard sell. And I think it's because it's so inclusive. But it's a statement of purpose. It's a statement of principle. And the nuts and bolts have to be ironed out. And Senator Ed Markey, when he was a representative, he introduced a bill last session called the SANE Act, which he then has reintroduced now into the Senate. And Representative Blumenauer from Oregon has introduced what's called the Rein-In Act, which was formerly SANE Act. And what that's doing is it's calling for a severe cutback in spending on nuclear weapons, cutting out various weapon systems, $100 billion a year. No, $10 billion a year, up to $100 billion to be cut from the nuclear weapons program. So that's one aspect of it. But what we really need is for people to ask the representatives to pay attention to both of these bills, but particularly to pay attention to HR-1650, because if the representatives hear from their constituents, then they're much more likely to introduce it. That's what happened when we were getting other co-sponsors in the past. This year, this session, Representative Raul Grijalva from Arizona has signed on. He is also introducing the uranium mining bill, so he's a hero in my mind.
Yes, he is. Somebody's also introduced a change to the hard rock mining bill. Earthworks told us about that, so there's some good legislation introduced.
So that's all I have to say, except I moved here to North Carolina where my mother was living when my husband died. And I became, before that, I was really working on nuclear weapons, getting rid of nuclear weapons. And I became a member of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, despite their support for HR-1650. And I've been actively working on all sorts of disarmament issues, but also an entirely nuclear-free future. Because when I came to the Southeast and I started to learn from Mary Olson, and I started to go to the Blue Ribbon Commission hearings on America's nuclear future, and filming what, the testimonies of people who wanted to object to it, and I have that up on, there's 3 websites that I maintain. One is prop1.org, which is tells you about Proposition 1 and also tells you about the vigil. There's on Yahoo, there's Nuke News, NUCNEWS, which I've been maintaining since 1998, which is sharing news about nuclear issues on a daily basis with people who subscribe. And then on YouTube, there's Proposition 1 campaign. And now on Facebook, I just set up Proposition 1 campaign too.
If you notice, the last workshop in here has left information on the board, and that might be very worthwhile just to put up on the board for anybody who passes through to look for us.
Good idea.
There's chalkboard.
That is a good idea.
That's a very good idea. Excellent.
You mentioned the HR-1650, and you mentioned another bill before that, more comprehensive, I think. Do you have a number for that?
You mean the SANE Act?
Yeah.
I don't have the number with me, but,
Oh, the same one.
yeah. That's in the Senate. It's more detailed. I don't know about it being more comprehensive. I think what we call Proposition 1 is pretty comprehensive. It's trying, it's saying, this is how we're gonna change our society so that we can make the world a safer place. Whereas the SANE Act is more specific in detailing what needs to be cut. It doesn't go far enough, though. It doesn't go to abolition.
It's what is considered possible on the Hill. It's out of Congress, and, you know, God bless former Representative, now Senator Markey, and Blumenauer too. But, you know, it's from their point of view, what could actually happen in the short run in a Congress that is all but deadlocked on everything. And certainly doesn't want to be cutting any nuclear weapons these days. So, you know, that one might get somewhere. Unfortunately, as Helen said, the Prop 1 bill is marvelous, and if implemented would fix the ongoing nature of the whole nuclear turmoil, but it ain't gonna happen anytime soon, as much as we all want it to.
That's a quandary. It ain't gonna happen anytime soon. Do we have time?
Good question.
No, I mean,
Not
I
much.
have to say, I appreciate all of you and you sharing your information, but we're trying to address it through a process that is dysfunctional.
Mhm.
And I appreciate those of you that have the fortitude to keep at it. Thank you so much. But the question that comes to my mind with Proposition 1 is, who is benefiting and how do we change their mind? Because until we change their mind or their pocketbook, which may be the same, this wonderful proposition is going to take 20 years to get in there, and
Well, the corporations need to be convinced that it's in their best interest to support this idea. And so what Proposition 1 is saying is that money, those billions of dollars spent on nuclear weapons every year, can be earmarked for transforming the industries so that people don't lose their jobs, and you know, the industries are going to be able to retool
if
and
I'm
retrain.
Western Electric or whoever put the plants up in Japan, I don't care. You're not going to convince me.
I think it's public awareness. I think we have to do the campaign from the bottom up. And, you know, I don't have a sense that we're ever going to, well, we might in our lifetime, see an end or movement. But I think that's not the issue. I think is that we all, I think, need to continue working in our little bit, you know, all the time.
Or big bit.
Because we don't have the magic, we don't have the globe that tells us what's going to happen in the future. And I think that that's our role.